tonight. We drift to the plains around Angkor, where water once moved like a patient mind, and stone learned to breathe in the form of towers. You don't need to remember names. You don't need to hold on to dates. Just follow the rhythm of a quiet day that begins in mist and ends beneath lamps of oil and a moon that looks like polished rice. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the past arrive slowly. The first light lifts the skin of the water. A broad reservoir lies out like a sleeping mirror, what the people here call a barre, held by earth embankments, shaped by hands and baskets and patient plans. The surface is still, except for where a heron draws a thin letter across it with each step. Beyond the barre, the plain is flat and generous. Fields wait for the day. Channels, trimmed and careful, comb the land. Mist is unhurried. Palms are silhouettes. A small wooden boat nosed gently into the water in the last hour of night and is now a quiet thought drifting along a bank lined with grasses. Near the spillway, a gate of stone and timber measures the gift of water. Someone will come soon to lift a panel and let the canal accept its share. A farmer stands with a yoke across his shoulders. 2 baskets breathe out the smell of yesterday's chaff. He looks at the moisture beading the leaves, listens to the frogs complete the last sentences of their long discussion, and then he steps onto the path. This path is ordinary and eternal. It is stamped by bare feet and the curved edges of wooden sandals. It is lined here and there by lotus leaves in small low basins, which hold sky the way careful hands hold a sleeping child. You hear a gentle call between neighbors, a greeting that asks nothing and promises only the comfort of routine. Behind them, the barre holds the dawn like a secret. The embankments are wide enough to walk. They are set with grass. On the windward side, ripples lap in polite, symmetrical rows, like the hems of robes at a ceremony. And there, slightly to the east, stone rises from trees in a familiar geometry, galleries and courtyards, towers like closed lotus buds, lines that negotiate with light. But we will not rush to the temple. First we will watch the water, because water is the first temple here. The planners once called channels to attention with cords and pegs, simple tools and careful eyes. The canals draw straight lines and curved lines both, as if the landscape itself were a woven mat laid out for a ritual meal. The sun's first rim appears. Dew loosens. The reed flute fades and in its place the sound of feet, of a shoulder pole settling deeper, of a wooden gate clacking once as it is set open a finger's width. Breathe in, breathe out. The barre is waking, and so are you. Gently. Somewhere far away, the rice fields are a calm grid, shimmering with water as thin as glass. Seedlings stand in measured gatherings, each one a green whisper, each one a promise made many months ago when the rains wrote their long letters across the plain. Farmers move in slow rows. They bend and rise with a cadence that is older than the empire and as reliable as the bell that will sound at the monastery later. Their hands are not in a hurry. They press each root into the soft bottom, not too deep, not too shallow, and leave a gentle swirl where the plant accepted its new home. A child walks the dike, carrying a small jar for fresh water. Insects that drift in from the canal. Not a harvest, not a duty. Just small curious pauses to examine the tiny oars of a water boatman. The skipping logic of a pond skater. The child's shadow is short now. Father's shadow stretches parallel to the dike like a calm guardian. Near the sluice, a monitor lizard glides from one patch of shadow to another and disappears into reeds. The air carries a sweet, grainy scent, and a quiet clink of pottery from a field's edge, where a simple water jar stands beneath a palm leaf roof. A dipper lifts and tilts. Coolness passes from clay to hand to throat. The canal murmurs. On its far bank a woman kneels to repair a tiny breach made by yesterday's careless goat. She cuts the grass square and presses it into the damp soil, sliding the heel of her hand across it as if smoothing cloth. Water tests the repair with curious fingers and then consents to behave. This is a morning of measured favors. Water accepts the field. Rice accepts the water. People accept the slow demands of both. Time grows. like rice, rooted, standing, swaying slightly. Always part of larger patterns the eye can see but the mind does not need to name. If you wish, imagine the sun climbing a finger's width, and then a second, and then a third. Each minute is a small basket filling with light. There is nothing you must do with it. Just watch it gather. Later in the morning, a slow procession of ox carts appears on a raised road. The road is tight with blocks of reddish stone, laterite, laid like modest teeth across mud that would otherwise swallow wheels. The carts move without hurry. Oxen breathe a steady rhythm. Each yoke is wrapped in cloth to keep it from biting into the neck. A boy at the head guides with a quiet word. The cargo is stone. Some blocks are pale, dappled with sand's memory, edges smoothed by patient hands. Others are raw, still showing the grain of the quarry. Ropes have left shallow lines across them, cords blackened with tallow and pigment so they resist fraying. The blocks are marked with chalky symbols that the masons read like brief letters, where to place, which face to show, which joint to trust. At a rest stop, under a frame of palm trunks with a thatch roof, the drivers share a bowl of rice and dried fish steeped in a light sauce. A thin dog lies in the patch of shade where breeze can find it. A jar of water leans in a nest of sand to keep cool. The carts creak once, and then they are quiet, as if listening to their own wheels exhale. The causeway approaches a gate. On either side, serpent balustrades, naga, undulate along the edge. Stone bodies plaited in calm curves. Their faces are not fierce here. They simply keep the road company. The gate is a frame of shadow and bird song. Inside, the compound is a world of measured noises, mallet on chisel, chisel on stone. The soft dismissal of dust as it falls. No one hurries. Angles are checked with cords and plumb lines. Sand is sieved through wicker to make mortar less coarse. A master mason runs his fingers along a new joint, feeling for the ghost of a ridge that could cause a later crack. He does not scold. He simply smiles and shows how to ease the edge with 3 light taps instead of one decisive strike. The apprentice nods, chastened and grateful, and practices the curve of patience with his hands. You look up. The sky is very bright. A thin cloud drifts along the line of a roof like a brush stroke of milk. A minor bird walks with serious steps along the stone, pecking once, looking left, looking right, then deciding there is nothing to worry about today. Close your eyes and travel back along the rope marks. Imagine the quarry that gave these stones their first names. Picture a hill where the skin of the earth is peeled back in smooth plains, pale and warm. Men stand in the expanding shade of a scaffolding. They place wedges along a chalk line drawn with the help of a taut string. They strike, not hard but regular. The stone listens. The stone decides to let go. When the block comes free, there is no cheer, just a breath. And then measured work. Ropes take the weight. Levers make a simple argument against gravity. And the block accepts its new home on a sled of thick timber. Sand is poured in front of the runners. Water is sprinkled at the right moments so the ground will neither seize nor slip. The quarry smells of wet dust and sap. A fig tree stands improbably close to the cut, its roots fingering down a rock face. A small charm, a knot of palm fiber, hangs from a peg near the workbench. Not a prayer shouted into the sky. Not a bargain. Just a quiet agreement with chance. Keep the wedge straight. Keep the rope clean. Keep the men healthy. The voices here are low. They speak in the grammar of the hand. Push now. Lift then. Wait. Ease. Go. The wedges sing a dull melody. The slope listens, one block at a time, until it changes shape in ways that can be read from the temple miles away. And when the sun moves to a less forgiving angle, work stops. Tools are placed with their edges away from the dirt. A cloth is drawn over a stack of wedges as if tucking them into a nap. The quarry sleeps. The temple dreams of another block. In a shaded gallery, near a column that has not yet learned its carvings, a scribe sits with a palm leaf manuscript. The leaves are smooth and long. Their holes are threaded with a cord. holding them in an order that the scribe can change if a section needs to move. He writes with a narrow stylus that incises, and then rubs dark powder so the letters reside like small quiet boats on a pale river. Beside him, a line is laid out on the floor using string and pegs. The string remembers straightness. A second string remembers right angles. A third remembers a clean radius. The head builder hums a simple tune while he checks. No rush. The line crosses the sunbeam inch by inch. And each shadow says yes. 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 A boy brings coconut water in clay cups. The men drink and lick salt from the rim of a small dish. A gentle breeze pushes at a hanging mat and then thinks better of it. Touching only the edge. Someone yawns. Someone laughs in the small way that shows gratitude without ambition. On the wall nearby, a relief panel already finished holds a processional scene. The dancers are slim and endlessly poised, their hands turn like leaves. The musicians carry a low thunder of drums and the light rain of xylophones. A prince studies a map that shows the Barret as a rectangle and the canals as careful veins. The people who carved these figures are now eating their rice beneath a tree. But the stone remembers them exactly as they wanted to be remembered, patient, proportioned, and kind to the eye. Mid-daylight moves away from the yard and the shade lengthens. Someone draws a line through dust with a stick and then wipes it with his foot. Not to erase but to blend. As if to say, not every mark needs to be held forever. In a quiet court, the carvers work. The first team opens space, flat plains, shallow depths, borders declared with straight edges. Their mallets are polished with use. The second team brings grace to ankles and wrists. They know how a waist breathes beneath silk. They know how a lotus leans toward its own reflection. Their chisels are narrow, their silence is full. Faces appear slowly. The way the moon appears before sunset if your eyes are patient. The carvers test curves with their fingertips. They trust touch first, sight second. A curl of hair falls from a goddess and rests a moment on the carver's knuckle before drifting to the floor. He does not blow, he lets air carry it away. A senior carver instructs an apprentice to leave more life in the eyelid. Do not cut the gaze into wakefulness. He says without words, just a gesture. 2 taps of the chisel held at a gentler angle. The apprentice nods, adjusts, and the goddess relaxes further into the stone. The dust is gathered carefully. It's not waste. It can sweeten a mortar, soften a polish. A boy tips it into a small basket. The afternoon light surveys the work and, apparently satisfied, withdraws a few feet, leaving a cooler shade behind. When a figure is finished, a thin cloth brushed with oil glides across it once. No shine is desired, just a whisper of protection. The goddess looks as if she will breathe if the night is kind. Near the northern wall, a small monastery keeps time in its own language. The monks move like water poured from one bowl to another, smooth, inevitable, respectful of edges. Their orange robes are a warm petal against stone. A bell marks the hour. A novice sweeps the courtyard in deliberate arcs that overlap like fish scales. In a simple wooden hall, a low chant vibrates the floor. It is not loud, just sure. Candles remain unlit for now, daylight still has duties. The abbot reads from a palm leaf, short lines. Plain counsel. The words are not about kings or conquest. They are about the mind choosing its posture. About the breath settling into its place. About how to put down what you don't need to carry. Outside, a line of villagers offers food. Rice is ladled into bowls. A curry made from morning herbs travels in a pot that still remembers the fire. The monks eat little and slowly. When finished, each bowl is washed with 3 careful turns of water, then tipped to dry in the sun, where laughter from 2 novices is carried off by wind and returns as only a feeling of contentment. The monastery keeps a small garden. Medicinal plants grow there, and a square of beetle vines climbs a frame. A wooden bench waits under a jackfruit tree, and on the bench rests a bundle of reeds, the kind that become pens when a scribe is patient. The day remains untroubled. A cloud passes. The chant becomes silence. The silence is not empty, it is alive with breathing. At the edge of the settlement, a small market gathers itself like a shawl. Nothing booms, everything hums. Woven mats display simple goods, fish dried into delicate questions. Salt white as unbroken thought. A stack of palm sugar discs that smell of warmth. A woman turns silk in her lap with a calm wrist. Measuring without measuring. A potter shows bowls the color of new rain. He taps one with a fingernail, ding, and smiles at the note. A woodworker passes his hand along the handle of a paddle. Then offers it to a fisherman who tests the balance and nods. Two children whisper a debate about which sweets will last longer. Though both know either choice will be gone before the second bell of the night. Music wanders in. Not a performance. Just practice. A small roniat, wooden keys laid over gourd resonators, plays 3 notes in a patient pattern. A drum answers with a stitched heartbeat. The tune doesn't go anywhere in particular. It stays right here. Tracing a circle. Faithful to the afternoon. You might linger. You might not. The market will forgive any decision you make. Its only rule is that no one needs to press time to hurry. As the sun leans toward the west, the barre returns to the color of old bronze. The embankment holds footsteps without complaint. A man sits with his feet over the side, toes just above the water. He holds a fishing line that barely remembers it is a line. The surface accepts a breath, then another. A small circle widens, then forgets itself, then becomes the barre again. Lotus pads tilt slightly. A damselfly chooses one like a quiet stage and preens a wing. It doesn't know it is being watched by a child carrying a reed flute who has decided, after a long internal discussion, not to play. The child listens instead. The decision is correct. A pair of egrets lifts, flaps once, and crosses the reservoir in a measured sentence, capital letter at takeoff. Commas where the wind is a little stronger. A soft period at the landing zone beyond. The day grows light in a different way now. Shadows knit long paths between trees and stones. The temple towers, seen from here, are gentle triangles against a sky that is learning to be lavender. A thin smell of cooking rice comes from somewhere just out of sight. The smell is an invitation. The barre does not object when you stand to follow it. A crew of builders sits in a narrow court that remembers shade even after sunset. Bowls travel hand to hand. Rice is fluffy and generous. A small dish of herbs. A plate of pickled greens. And a fish stew that has learned to be patient on slow heat. Someone tells a story that he has told many times before. And everyone laughs in the same comfortable places. The story is not funny because it surprises, it is funny because it does not. A chisel lies near, wrapped in cloth. A mallet rests handle up like a polite guest. The talk moves to the subject of joints that behaved. Of a corner that will need a whisper of attention tomorrow. Of the good luck of a cloud that saved a worker from the meanest hour of sun. A young builder tests his palm against the warmth of the clay pot and draws it back with a smile. The elder nods approval. Not of pain, but of sensitivity. Hands that honor temperature usually on a stone. When the bowls are empty, they are rinsed with water that still carries the day's memory of the canal. The water likes its new task. It lets the rice grains slip away and offers the bowls a cool hush before they are stacked in a tidy tower. Night settles within the temple like silk being folded. Oil lamps bloom in niches along the walls. Their flames are small tongues of agreement with darkness. A thin aromatic thread rises and drifts toward a ceiling the eye would strain to find if the lamps cared to show it. They do not. They show only enough. Musicians gather in a side court. The roniat begins, a wooden xylophone with the sound of drops on a calm pond. A sralai, a double reed, weaves a line that never insists. 2 drums answer without hurry. A low one speaking in syllables. A lighter one finishing each thought with a smile. The music does not rise, it circles evenly. The courtyard becomes a bowl for it. Dancers move, if they choose to move at all, in gestures that are almost stillness. Fingers unfurl and curl like the opening and closing of a water plant at dusk. Ankles flex and hold. Faces are the color of lamplight. And the eyes are at rest. There is no crowding. There is no need for applause. The music and the movement are not a show, they are a way of being with night. A priest steps through arcs of shadow to touch a small flame to a stick of incense. Then offers the smoke to an unseen presence that does not need incense but enjoys. Perhaps the sincerity of the gesture. Words are spoken in a tone that is friendly to sleep. The words are less important than the rhythm of the breath that carries them. Beyond the walls, the barrier keeps its pact with stars. Insects sign their names on the air. The temple breathes in time with the people who built it. The people who farmed its fields. The people who will, long after, stand here and wonder how water and stone taught each other to be calm. A watchman makes his rounds with a staff that touches stone every dozen steps like a punctuation mark that keeps the sentence from wandering. He is not stern. He is attentive. He pauses to listen to a corner where the wind likes to play. He listens to a rope creak once where a banner leans from a high pole. He nods at a sleeping stray dog that has found the warmest square of paving. Inside a workshop, a small lamp keeps company with a careful craft. A woman weaves a panel whose pattern looks like the branches of a river seen from very far above. Her hands do not rush. The pattern is already in her. The threads only need to be reminded. On a bench, a set of tools gleams. Their edges are shy under soot. But the shapes say everything. A narrow chisel for eyelids. A flat one for borders. A spoon-shaped one for peeling a curve from stone. Tools sleep better when they are clean. They dream better when they are laid in order. Beyond, in a modest room, a scribe ties a cord through a new palm leaf, strings it into the sequence, and rests the whole bundle on a low shelf. He closes his eyes. Not because the work is finished, but because night has given him permission to stop deciding for a while. Now, night is a completed thought. A ritual unfolds that uses only ordinary gestures. A door bar is set gently into its sockets. A jar lid is placed. The fire is asked to remember its last ember until morning, and then it is left with a little smile. A mat is smoothed. A pillow is turned to the cooler side. A hand reaches to pinch a lamp's wick shorter. And the flame accepts the new lesson. In one house, a grandmother tells a child, almost asleep, the ordinary future of tomorrow. We will wash our faces, we will tie our hair, we will walk to the canal if it is kind, we will see the egrets again, we will thank the stone for its patience, we will thank the rice for its steady courage, we will be simple and alive. The child is already more asleep than awake. The promise of tomorrow enters the child's breathing and finds a place to sit quietly. The temple is not asleep. Exactly. It is keeping silence. The walls hold a coolness that the day gave them. The carvings are content to be outlines of bodies and flowers and stories until light returns to teach them edges again. The barre and the canals loosen their grip a little. Beds of lilies float and make small bedtime creaks against each other. If you have carried anything here that you do not need to carry, lay it on a stone ledge where the lamps are almost done. You can collect it later if you want it back. It will not be offended if you forget. Many burdens are happiest when forgotten. Somewhere, the east begins to pale again. Though you cannot see it yet, you feel it because the insects adjust their conversation by one note. And silence stitches a new seam between sounds. A rooster clears his throat in a far courtyard and then decides to wait. The watchman looks at the sky and thinks of tea. A light, generous coolness crosses the barre and touches stone and leaf and water jar and human hair. It brightens nothing yet, it only promises. The temple hears the promise and continues to rest. The rice fields hear it and feel their own bodies grow a finger's width taller. Though they do not show off. Breathe in. Slow. Breathe out. Slower. If sleep wants you, let it take you. If wakefulness wants you, let it sit beside you without speaking. The world of Angkor does not insist. It knows that water finds its level. That stone keeps faith. That people can be gentle with their work and gentle with their nights. If you remember anything from this long quiet visit. Let it be the soft truth that great things are made from small, patient hours. The dawn becomes morning. Along a quiet canal, the water architects arrive with simple tools, cords, pegs, a plumb bob that is just a stone on a string, a wooden level with a bubble trapped like a calm thought. They do not hurry the world. They listen to gradient the way you might listen to a lullaby, one note, then another, then a long soft rest. A line is measured by steps and corrected by eyes that have practiced not to insist. The canal wants to fall too fast, they tuck a small shelf of earth under it, smoothing with the flat of the hand. They press grass into the new berm so roots will remember their job. Between two palms, they stretch a cord and dust it with ash. Let go, snap, and a straight grey whisper appears across the damp soil. The canal nods and accepts the improvement. A young surveyor cups the plumb bob in his palm to warm the stone. It steadies the swing. A master kneels and lowers a gate blade into its grooves to test the fit. Down. Down. Gentle. Stop. It holds. He lifts it a third of the way and water speaks. Just a little. To say that it understands. The team smiles like people hearing a familiar voice on the other side of a door. They mark today's work in a small tally on a palm leaf, not a boast. Not a ledger of glory. Simply a memory aid. The leaf goes back into its sleeve. The canal resumes its patient journey. And the fields wait with good manners. On a low veranda a grandmother traces circles on a dusty board. Each circle is a moon. Each small notch at the circle's edge is an old story, the day the frogs sang too early. The year the mangoes took their time. The season when the rains stepped forward then backward like a shy dancer. She speaks in a tone even softer than the one she uses for children. If clouds stand there, she says, nodding toward the long line of trees that keep a far horizon, the early rice will smile. If they settle here, she says, tapping a nearer patch of sky, the late rice will get its drink. Her daughter listens with the same face she wore when she was 10. The grandson listens with a face that doesn't know it is learning, but is. A sheet of cloud crosses the sun and leaves everything silver for a moment. In the yardage arc offs when it is moved, air escaping its throat, and the sound is like a promise that the rain will not forget this place. The promise is enough for now. The circles are brushed away with the side of a hand. The board becomes a piece of wood again. And the day continues. Weeks have turned without announcing themselves. Now the rice heads bend like guests bowing to a host they like. The field is gold. Not loud gold, but the kind that remembers sunlight even when clouds are present. Harvest is not a frenzy. It is a series of patient gestures. Hands gather a tuft of stalks. A sickle curves under them and persuades them to join the rest. Stalks lie down in neat bundles tied with twine that smells a little of leaf and a little of smoke. Children step lightly along the dikes, carrying water and a sweetness wrapped in a leaf. They are careful not to show off their balance, which is excellent. At the field's edge, panicles are laid on a mat. The mat receives them with a good temper. A woman flicks her wrist, and grains jump from their cradles into a basket. The sound is a soft rain in reverse. Nobody hurries the rhythm. It finds its own pace and teaches it to the bodies that are helping. A lizard makes zigzag decisions across the warm stone. A dragonfly chooses a bundle of stalks as a pause and is admired for it. The sky tests a darker gray, decides to remain a lighter one. The baskets fill. Not quickly, not slowly, exactly as they should. In the cool shadow of trees, a path opens to the weight of an old friend. An elephant moves with a grace that does not care to be noticed. A bell the size of a cupped hand hangs beneath the throat and answers the steps with a low, friendly question. A handler speaks in a tone between song and secret. He does not pull the rope. He suggests. They carry timber, beams smoothed by water and time, and stop often to be sure the earth is ready to hold the path they make. At a small stream the elephant enjoys the unavoidable, cool water over ankles. Trunk tasting sips as if the stream were a story told by a patient voice. The crew ahead arranges rollers and levers. But today the timber hardly needs them. The elephant leans a shoulder where a shoulder will do. And the beam accepts the invitation to move. At rest. The handler plucks a bundle of herbs from his satchel and offers them. The elephant breathes in their smell and in return gives the world 2 slow blinks that look exactly like gratitude. When they reach the site, the timber is slid into shadow where it will learn its next task. The elephant spell says one last low word. The forest replies by being green. A wooden house stands on stilts. Underneath, shade holds coolness like a jar holds water. A ladder rises to the main room, where mats suggest circles for conversation. The house is a quiet shell for smaller houses inside it. A basket with rice becomes a pantry, a low bench with woven reed becomes a workshop, a corner with a sleeping roll becomes a dream. In the kitchen space a clay stove glows with a small flame. The pot above it sings in the key of steam. Herbs are bruised in a mortar until they remember fragrance. A child is trusted with the pestle for 3 careful turns and then entrusted with drinking water as a promotion. On a beam, a cloth bag holds tools used rarely but with affection. A spool of strong thread. A few polished bone needles. A small knife wrapped like a poem. The wall wears 2 shadows that look like grandparents. Except the grandparents are outside. So the shadows must be memories practicing. The floor knows the exact step of each person and makes a different polite sound for each pair of feet. A guest arrives. Tea is poured, light, green, unhurried. The guest does not ask for news. He notices a repaired mat edge and praises the neatness of the repair as if it were a new story. It is. Rain begins exactly when it wishes. No sooner. No later. It comes with large, kind drops that find palm fronds and roof thatch and the faces of jars. The world becomes a drum. Patterns rise and merge and soften. The air loosens its grip on heat and lets coolness enter like an honored guest who knows where the cups are kept. Inside, lamps dim themselves because the rain is already a light of its own. People lean back and lean in. A grandfather tells a story too simple to be written on a leaf. That he once walked in heavier rain and did not mind. That he once planted in lighter rain and was surprised by generosity. That he learned never to measure the sky with a ruler. The rain says nothing out loud and makes its point anyway. The canal agrees in whispers. Frogs open their small theaters and sing a play with no plot and perfect pacing. Sleep arrives on tiptoe. Checks each corner for draft. And curls itself under the edge of the mat. In a workshop where night lingers even at noon, a bronze worker tends a small world of fire. The mold is clay and ash and patience. The wax model has already taught the mold its shape and gone away. The crucible glows like a red fruit. The bellows breathe the world into hotter truth. When the pour begins, nobody speaks. The stream of bronze is a sentence that must not be interrupted. It fills the empty space with a modest glow, remembering the curve of a bell or the calm weight of a small statue that will sit in shadow and learn to be beloved. Cooling takes the time cooling takes. The mold is cracked with a sound like a footstep in dry season. Dust lifts. A figure emerges the way dawn emerges from night. First suggestion. Then acceptance. Then clarity. The artisan does not smile widely. He nods as if he has just recalled a friend's name. Edges are softened with stone. The surface learns to be gentle. A little oil convinces the bronze to glow only from within. When the piece is placed on a low shelf, the shelf feels more complete. The air more at ease. A small bell is tried only once, a round tone that hangs and then walks away without calling attention to itself. Along a raised road, a rest house offers shade and a jar. The traveler arrives with dust on his ankles and thanks in his breath. He dips a ladle. The water tastes of clay and coolness and a little bit of afternoon. A bench provides the kind of comfort that comes not from softness but from being in the right place. No questions have to be asked. The house keeps its purpose the way a tree keeps its leaves. A caretaker nods without counting. The traveler offers a small coin and a bigger smile. He takes off his sandals and rests his feet on the floor's coolness, which recognizes every guest as if they had been here many times before. He listens to a nearby palm reading its own leaves. He closes his eyes not to sleep, just to match the hush. In a niche, someone has left a palm leaf page with 6 lines of travel counsel that nobody needs but everybody likes. Walk early. Carry less. Greet dogs with confidence. Water your thoughts with silence. Trust the angle of the road. Stop when the shade tells you to. He leaves as he arrived, quietly fulfilled by ordinary kindness. A carver sits before a slab of stone that will become a message for people who have not been born. The letters are calm forms, measured by habit and guided by a string pressed between 2 nails. He does not dig deep. He invites the shadow to do some of the work. Each groove is a valley for light to rest in. What does it say? Names. Perhaps. Gifts given and received. A line about water and gratitude. A year the sky was generous. A year the earth needed help. And the way help arrived. It might also say nothing that requires a scholar. Only things that require a good heart. Be steady. Be fair. Be gentle with tools and with people. When the sun moves to a better angle for reading, he stops. He covers the stone with a cloth so the letters won't feel stared at. Tomorrow he will return and give them their quiet shine. The stone is in no hurry to be understood. On a patch of sand, a builder kneels and draws a shape with a reed. A circle. Then a square that touches the circle at 4 soft kisses. A second circle slips around them both like an arm around shoulders. He nods. Not because geometry is grand, but because it is friendly. These shapes help walls meet roofs with good manners. An apprentice learns the trick for true right angles, a chord with knots at patient intervals. A triangle that always tells the truth if you hold it gently. The apprentice smiles when width and height and length decide to agree. He erases the drawing with his palm, and the sand thanks him by becoming blank for the next lesson. Nearby, a lotus opens with mathematics of its own, petals spiraling with a logic that never needed a chord. A bee confirms the calculation. In a cool room with a narrow window, palm leaf manuscripts rest on shelves that know how to be quiet. Bundles are tied with black cord. Titles are not painted loudly, they are simply remembered by people who love them. A scribe lifts one bundle and fans the leaves on the table. The smell is light and clean, as if the words were new. Subjects mingle without jealousy, a local history that prefers kindness over conquest, a set of healing recipes that begin with boiling water and end with patience, a text on conduct that could be summarized as do the gentle thing. The scribe incises a correction into a margin, then rubs a little soot to give the mark its small authority. The page looks grateful. When the bundle is tied again, the knot is simple and sure. The scribe returns it to a shelf that accepts the weight the way a lap accepts a sleeping child, easily. With affection. Night. Again. But a different night. The stars lay themselves across the barret. And for a moment the reservoir pretends to be a sky that has learned to be horizontal. A young monk counts a familiar pattern and quietly forgets the number on purpose, letting the pattern be bigger than counting. Somewhere a thin wooden bell speaks once, reminding people to put away tools and bring out rest. A fisherman decides not to fish. He sits instead, and the empty basket beside him does not feel like loss. It feels like an agreement with time. A breeze writes the same line over and never gets bored. The lotus pads think about closing. The water says yes. The monsoon's voice clears its throat far away. Not a threat. An announcement. The air swells a little as if it had just remembered a song it used to know. People glance up and exchange faces that say, soon. A priest steps out to look at the sky and smiles without asking for anything. A farmer moves a jar under a drip edge because the first rain is a friend you still prepare for. Children fetch leaves big enough to wear as hats and practice walking with slower, ceremonial steps. They are very serious about it until they laugh. The first drops arrive and the earth answers with the smell that has no rival. Everything that can be satisfied is satisfied. Everything that can pause pauses. Thunder puts a hand on the big drum again. Softer this time. As if to say, sleep. In a storehouse that feels like a long breath held and released. Sacks of rice stand in quiet rows. A man walks along them with his palm touching each one lightly, counting without numbers. He checks the baskets set on the feet of the stilts, little water bowls that turn away ants without argument. A tiny bell near a beam rings once when a rat tests its resolve and changes its mind. He ties a charm above the doorway, a knot of grass. A small ribbon of cloth, more to thank the harvest than to ask for anything. He sits on the threshold with his back against the frame and lets his eyes close without falling asleep. The storehouse looks like contentment wearing a wooden coat. At midday the temple holds more shade than shadow. Galleries offer long, even pools of cool air. A cat walks like a scholar who has solved a problem and decided not to mention it. The stone beneath your palm has learned the temperature of rivers. It lends you a little of that memory. You pass a doorway where dancers have been carved into the frame. Their feet curved like commas. The space keeps the music they once suggested. But very quietly, a novice snaps with his head on a folded robe. Nobody uses the word sacred. There is no need. The stones do their work without making claims. In a corner a custodian mends a broom with new twigs, binding them with cord, saving the handle that has many hours behind it. He looks up, smiles the way one smiles to acknowledge existence, and returns to the twigs. The broom will sweep many days, and the days will enjoy it. Toward evening a festival begins not with a shout but with a glow. Lamps line a path. People arrive wearing their ordinary clothes slightly more carefully. Baskets covered with cloth wait their turn to open and become generosity. A line of musicians tests notes that already trust each other. Procession is a word that sometimes means walking together at the speed of kindness. It happens now. A priest carries nothing heavier than a smile. Children carry flowers that are wise about wilting and decide not to do it yet. At the shrine, offerings are set down and no one rushes to light anything. Flame will arrive when it has finished its previous errand. When music circles, feet answer with steps taught by grandparents and also by common sense. Hands carve shapes in air and leave them behind like invisible reliefs on the evening. The festival proves a simple theorem, that a people can be strong without being loud. Work rests. In the workshop a chisel is wrapped. The mallet stands to show respect for the bench. A cord is wound onto its peg with the same care one would use for a poem. Which is what it is, a poem that remembers straightness so others don't have to. In the scribe's room the stylus lies parallel to the leaf's fibers. The lamp has learned to be small. A shelf that has carried weight all day continues to carry weight. Not because it must but because it likes to. Outside, the bar across a door glides into its sockets with a sound that tells everyone they are allowed to stop making choices. The night takes responsibility for a while. It is good at that. A mat. A pillow that knows two sides. A woven cloth that has served many nights. The body arranges itself into the shape of being safe. Breath chooses a pace that works. The mind keeps a few embers for warmth and lets the rest go dim. Outside, canals take turns speaking to each other. A frog chooses a note and repeats it not because it cannot think of another, but because that note is exactly right. A palm frond taps its neighbor once and then falls still. Somewhere a bell identifies the hour and then forgets its own announcement. If you are awake, you are welcome to be awake. If you are asleep, you are welcome to be asleep. The night has room for both. Morning arrives not with triumph but with competence. A sweeping broom draws long arcs that overlap like kindness. A pot is tested with a knuckle, ding, and filled. The stove is coaxed, not commanded. Rice thinks about being rice again. People greet without harvesting each other's attention. A hand on a shoulder is enough. A grin that shows one missing tooth is enough. A nod that says we are still here is enough. The temple admits another day as if days were old friends who never overstay. The barret receives a small braid of sunlight and wears it without boasting. The fields check their green and find it satisfactory. Work rehearses its steps and then performs them without audience. Everything is the same and, for that, quietly wonderful. Stand, if you wish, on the embankment and look a long way. See the right-angled comfort of canals. The squares of fields like pages ready for writing. The temple that knows how to be elaborate and modest at once. It is all a book you can read by touch. Imagine someone, far in the future, standing and looking back toward you. They will not know your name. They will know your pace. They will feel the way you chose to make great things from small hours. They will drink from a jar and taste coolness. They will listen to night animals and hear home. The cord snaps along a new line. The plumb bob stills. The day nods. We began with water and stone and breath. We arrive again at water and stone and breath. The reservoir is a sky lying down. The temple is a mountain standing politely. Your breathing is the bridge between them. If you carried worries into this place, you may leave them on a step where the sun will warm them into lighter shapes. If you collected quiet here, take some with you. It folds easily. It weighs nothing. It knows how to be shared. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the day be simple. Let the night be kind. At a quiet inlet off the canal, a boatwright kneels beside an upturned hull. The wood smells of river and sun. A low plane moves with the long patience of tide, lifting curls that fall onto the mat like thin moons. He touches the curve with his palm, not to measure, but to remember. A new plank is offered to the hull. Pegs rest in a small wooden bowl like seeds. A child hands them one at a time with ceremonial care. Holes are bored, no hurry, no show. A cord dipped in resin becomes a dark thread that fills the seam the way silence fills a pause in speech. The plank, the pegs, the resin, and the steady hands agree on a future without splinters. Beside the work, a jar of water wears a palm leaf as a hat. The boatwright drinks, then wets a cloth and draws a patient line along a stubborn edge. The edge softens, then listens. A light knock with a mallet, a soft hum that keeps rhythm, and the hull becomes a little more itself. When they roll the boat, the water greets it with a quiet congratulation. Two ripples that travel, meet, and forget themselves. The boatwright smiles the way a person smiles when a sentence finally says what it meant. Downstream, barges rest shoulder to shoulder like good neighbors. The first carries laterite blocks. The second carries sand that thinks of itself as future mortar. The third carries nothing yet. Which is its contribution for now? Space for plans to stand in. Men lean into poles and the barges answer with even sighs. At bends, ropes pass around posts that look like polite trees. The river does not mind. It is made for this, bearing weight without collecting praise. An egret leads from bend to bend without admitting it is leading. At a landing, the sand is coaxed ashore on sleds. The sleds enjoy their job. This is what they were made for. Men pour water on the ramp and it glosses the path like a conversation that has found its ease. The blocks follow, slower, content to let sand go first. A ledger keeper scratches a mark on a leaf, 3 thin lines. 1 dot, enough to remember the truth with. A boy watches the barges ride higher with each unload and draws his own conclusion. Emptiness can be a kind of lightness that helps everyone else move. Along the barray's edge, dike keepers walk with hands held easy at their sides. Their work is simple and exact. Find where the embankment forgets its shape and help it remember. A hare's tunnel is discovered, a gift of enthusiasm if you are a hare. A problem if you are a dike. A keeper kneels, pats the soil, and lays a mat of sod like a kind hand over a restless shoulder. Where waves have nibbled, baskets of earth arrive. The new earth is compacted with the rhythm of heart and foot. A woven fence is set in the shallows to break the fetch of wind. It whispers when the water tests it, and the water agrees to be gentler. They check the spillway gate. Its cheeks are greased with oil made from a seed that remembers sun. The blade rises and falls with the gravity of a nod. They chalk a mark, today's level, and the barray carries the chalk like a jewel and doesn't complain. On the last stretch, they sit. The dike holds them the way it holds everything else. without ceremony, without complaint. A breeze gives them the rumor of far-off music, and a leaf falls into the water and becomes a boat with no destination and perfect success. In the shadow of a jackfruit tree, a healer arranges small bowls in a crescent. Each holds a leaf, a bark shaving, a seed that keeps a story. She listens to a farmer describe a pain that wakes at dawn and sleeps at noon. She nods, not as a judge, but as a lake nods to the wind. Leaves are bruised and release their voices. Steam takes those voices and turns them into comfort. She ties a cloth around a wrist, not to bind, but to remind the blood to move with better courtesy. She speaks 5 words that are not magic but behave as if they are: rest, drink, eat plainly, walk softly. The farmer agrees, and the pain listens, already making smaller plans. On a shelf, bottles with corks stand like unassuming friends. The healer replaces one with a fresh brew and taps the cork as if telling it the secret of staying put. A lizard on the wall nods twice, lending its authority. A girl enters with a thorn in her heel and leaves with an absence where the thorn used to be, and a great respect for hot water and patient hands. A loom is a polite machine that requests rhythm and returns cloth. The weaver sits with her feet like quiet birds on the pedals. The shuttle flies and returns as if remembering home. The warp holds straightness, the weft brings conversation. Together they produce a fabric strong enough to hold a season. Patterns speak in a code of small changes. 3 dark threads where 2 were expected, a light thread placed 1 beat sooner, a border that tilts as if listening closely. The design is not written anywhere else. It lives in the hands and the chest. The loom merely makes it visible to someone standing nearby. A child watches and is told the first rule: never tie a knot you cannot untie in peace. The second rule arrives only after an hour: let mistakes become motifs. The third rule is not spoken: look long enough, and cloth will teach you about days. A new roll is finished and carried to a low shelf. The shelf glows because someone put careful work on it. From far villages, a pilgrim arrives with a bowl that has learned to be empty most of the time. The temple provides water and a corner of shade. He asks for nothing else and receives more: a palm of rice, a pinch of salt, a bed of reed that remembers other backs and holds no grudge. He walks the galleries with eyes that do not grip. He reads the reliefs with respect for their silence. Where dancers turn, he slows his breath. Where warriors march, he keeps walking. Where the lotus blooms, stone upon stone, he closes his eyes so the lotus can be visible from the inside. At dusk, he lights a lamp with 3 breaths. The flame accepts the bargain: small light now in exchange for a little oil forever. He sleeps without a door, kept by courtesy and the deep security of having needed very little and receiving exactly that. In a workshop that smells of lime and gum, a storyteller draws in charcoal on a pale wall. Figures appear, not to shout history, but to accompany evenings. A river becomes a line of calm shoulders. A city becomes a basket of squares. A goddess lifts a hand that blesses without fanfare. Across the way, another storyteller paints on cloth. His brush is a reed, his colors are ground patience, yellow from earth, red from a stone that told the truth, black from smoke that finally found its use. He hums, and the hum becomes a horizon the figures can rest against. At night, these cloths will hang in a breeze and turn slight arcs that make everyone believe the stories are breathing. The wall will keep its calm, holding daylight for morning eyes. Neither needs applause. Their work is to make the air friendly to memory. Children form a circle of pebbles and invent laws: step only on the flat stones, share the shade equally, frogs have right of way. They enforce these laws with serious faces that break into laughter without warning. A reed flute tries 3 notes, forgets one, and achieves perfection anyway. They trade treasures: a striped seed, a feather with 1 brave bend, a bead that may be glass or may be the memory of glass. A girl wins a game of quiet by holding her breath longer than anyone else. She breathes again and is praised by the whole court. They build a small dam and declare a festival when it holds. When it fails, they declare a different festival. This is the wisdom of the Children's Republic. Every outcome is the correct one if you know how to name it kindly. In a shaded shed, a clock of stone keeps numbers that refuse to be sharp. He counts blocks by sound, tapping the corner for a note that tells him whether the heart is intact. He weighs not with a scale but with a memory of how much two men should groan when they lift. Marks on leaves, strings of shells, knots on a cord, each is a way the future is allowed to remember today. He is not anxious. The temple grows like a tree, rings added while no one watches. His job is to notice without tightening his shoulders. At noon, he eats a scoop of rice and 2 slices of mango and feels sorry only for people who have never eaten 2 slices of mango at noon. A team plants trees along a road that will be traveled by feet that love shade. Holes are opened like invitations. Each sapling arrives with a patient root ball that has already told itself stories of wind. A hand presses soil around it. Not too hard, not too soft, like a promise made sensibly. They stretch baskets over the young ones so goats will admire without chewing. A jar tilts and gives a bowl of water to each trunk. A thread of cloth is tied, not as a superstition but as a way to remind people that hope has a location. When they are done, the road looks like a future where traveling is kinder. Birds agree in advance by visiting the branches that have not yet grown. A hinge block at the north gate has confessed a crack. Carvers remove the gate leaf and let it rest on a carved block that has known many gate leaves. A rasp kisses the wound. Dust falls like small confessions and then like absolution. A new stone is coaxed into the old space with wedges that speak 2 languages, firmness and mercy. Mortar claims the slender lines light used to occupy, and light graciously finds other work to do. When the gate leaf returns to its post, it settles with the sound doors make when they forgive time. The watchman tests the swing, open, close, more open, less close, and nods with the solemn joy of a man whose job is also an art. At the barret's lip, people set small lamps on broad leaves and persuade them to float. Each lamp is a thought that decided to be light. They drift in calm constellations. The moon looks down and sees itself multiplied into patient answers. No one prays aloud. Wishes are folded into the lamps like tiny notes. Some lamps come back to shore and are helped outward again. Nothing is scolded for coming back. Everything is thanked for going. When a lamp soil is finished, it becomes a dark flower again and rests on the water, which understands how to hold flowers. 2 fishermen push a little boat with 1 oar. They say nothing because water already speaks. No net tonight, only a line that has learned respect for patience. They do not hunt the fish, they invite them. The float winks. A hand lifts. Not quickly, not slowly. The fish arrives as a small silver decision. They admire it, decide it will be dinner, and thank the shape of the world that made such a simple exchange possible. They let more moments pass than strikes. Back at shore, the fire is smaller and the pan is honest. Oil says yes. Fish says thank you. Night says you are welcome. The temple has a day for being cleaned in public, because love is also a broom. People come with baskets of twig brushes and cloths worn thin by sincerity. Children go first at the lowest stones, elders go deepest into the quiet corners. No one supervises, everyone participates. Dust rises as if surprised to be so wanted. A boy learns the pleasure of a swept threshold. A girl discovers a hidden flower in a carving that was waiting behind a grey film. A monk shows how water can wash without erasing. The temple becomes itself again by degree. When the last bucket empties, someone invites air to do the rest. Air accepts. Stone cools. People step back to see the way light enjoys clean edges. They smile. Not at themselves, but at light. The day closes like a book that knows it will be opened again. Doors remember to be doors. Lamps learn the lesson of smaller and smaller. The sky counts to dark without missing a number. On mats, bodies find the shapes they needed to be all along. In dreams, Fields irrigate themselves. Elephants teach levers to be kinder. And boats repair their own seams. The mind salts away enough memory for wisdom and lets the rest return to the river. If you are listening, listen less. If you are breathing, breathe more. The night is a soft teacher and has infinite patience. Morning claims the horizon with a thin gold line and no argument. A clock sits on the threshold and writes 3 small notes: water level fine, north hinge faithful, harvest content. He could write more, but the day prefers to carry its own record. He caps the pot, sets the leaf aside, and washes his face with water that politely wakes skin without startling it. The temple keeps breathing. The barrack keeps thinking long thoughts. People rise with the unshowy dignity of those who are about to do again what they already do well. A teacher draws a letter in sand and the class answers with the same letter on their own squares. The lesson is low enough to fall asleep to, which is one of its virtues. He tells them that letters are baskets for sounds. And they nod as if this were a story about boats. He teaches numbers as stones moved into small piles. Addition is a friendship, subtraction is a farewell that leaves gifts behind. Multiplication is a garden. Division is sharing cut fruit among cousins. The children understand, the world already had mathematics before anyone named it. They bow, not to the teacher, but to the ground that held the letters so politely. The ground stays to host the next lesson. The kiln has been warm all night. The potter opens the mouth and the day inhales the smell of cooled fire. Vessels emerge the color of patient dusk. He thumps each with a knuckle and listens for a note that tells whether it will hold water or stories or both. A boy paints a line of slip around a rim with the care of a scribe. A girl sands a rough base with the side of a broken shard that found a second life. Shelves receive. Jars accept. And the road to the market grows ambitious just imagining the work it will carry. The potter takes 1 cup for himself, fills it at the jar, and proves, again, that clay and water are a friendship with no end. Paths do not need ink. They write themselves with feet. A trader from the west meets a farmer from the south. And the crossing becomes a letter that means hello. Children, running in a game, draw commas and parentheses in dust. An old couple takes the punctuation away with a broom and replaces it with a calm line that means home. At a fork, someone has set 3 stones to favor the left. No signboard, just a kindness. A traveler notices and turns left and finds water sooner than thirst would have preferred. Later, he moves the middle stone a finger width to make the kindness clearer. The map remains accurate because everyone edits it with care. We have walked a long circle and found ourselves where we began, at the edge of water. Within the patience of stone. Among people who work without hurry and rest without guilt. Nothing dramatic demanded us, nothing dramatic was needed. If you carry away anything, let it be the shape of a small lamp on a broad leaf. The feel of a gate that swings after repair. The sound a loom makes when the weft finds home. Let it be the lesson the barret teaches every breeze, hold plenty without boasting. Before the sun is certain of itself. A tapper climbs a sugar palm with a rope that knows his weight. Clay pots hang beneath cut flower stalks, each collecting a patient sweetness. He lowers them one by one, never rattling the tree's thoughts. At the stove, the sap learns to be syrup without being rushed. The pot breathes. A wooden spoon makes slow circles until the liquid thickens into a kindness that will sweeten rice, tea, and long afternoons. Children bring palm leaf cones for cooling. The tapper pours, just enough for each. A small taste for the cook, a smaller taste for the watcher, and a promise saved for the market. The air smells like warm light. Coconut fibers sit in a basket like a tired lion's mane. 2 women pull and tease and water the strands until they remember to be friends. Twisting begins, right, left, right, left. An old conversation. A spindle hums in a voice with no sharp edges. The rope thickens, learns to hold, learns to forgive rain and time. They rub the finished length with oil and sun. A man arrives to buy it for a ferry mooring. He tests it with his palms. Not to find fault. Only to greet its future. The rope bows slightly. Already loyal. Across the wide slow river. A ferry waits like a patient bridge. People step aboard with baskets that know their way. The ferryman plants his pole. Leans. And lets current do the elegant work. Birds cross faster, no one competes. Midstream. He pauses so the boat can feel the river properly. Children count ripples to pretend at mathematics. A woman unwraps a leaf parcel and shares a sticky rice ball with the smallest set of fingers on deck. The opposite bank grows larger by politeness. Not by effort. The rope on the post will like its job. Where a canal has learned laziness at a curve. Dredgers arrive. Bare feet find the honest grip of mud. Baskets travel in a steady relay, scoop, lift, tip, smooth. The removed silt climbs the bank into small terraces where vegetables will thank it later. A caretaker scratches depth marks on a pole. The numbers look satisfied. A dragonfly lands on the pole like a seal of approval. When the dredgers stop, the water moves as if it had been reminded of a song it always liked. In a shaded shed, trays of mulberry leaves become an orchestra. Silkworms play them in the only way they know, steady, soft. A girl feeds fresh leaves, spreading them like a blanket. Cocoons come later, like small moons gathered in a shallow basket. At the reeling pot, steam wraps the room with kindness. Threads rise together, not in a show, but in a community. A reel collects them into a line that will be woven into days. No one pulls hard. Silk dislikes impatience. It loves warm water and even hands. On bare earth near a new gallery, builders measure a grid the way monks count breaths. Chords hold true. A triangle whispers exactness. Pegs enter ground like good ideas becoming habits. The master checks a right angle with a smile that is really relief. They lift the first course of blocks onto a bed of sand and lime. Each block settles with a small, contented sound. The line is straight without being proud. The wall will be strong without being loud. Fermented rice sleeps in jars under a trellis that throws a quiet pattern of shade. At evening, a stopper sighs. The first ladle is offered to the earth. The next to the ancestors. The rest to friends who worked all day and prefer a warmth that stays in the chest. Cups are clay. Edges smoothed by use. Laughter is small. Stories are smaller. Contentment is large. A handful of roasted grains passes around as a companion. Music declines to perform and hums instead. Nobody counts refills, the jar knows when enough is correct. In a corner of the musician's court, a craftsman laces a drum. The hide is washed in moonlight and patience. He pulls the cord with care until the skin replies in a note that promises rain will sound different tonight. A child taps the rim with one finger and looks astonished at the kindness of resonance. When the ensemble gathers later, the drum will speak under the music, saying steady, steady, steady. For now, it listens to its own silence and approves. In a cool hall, dancers practice a hand that opens like a morning, a wrist that turns like a river bend, a foot that promises to arrive exactly where it means to. The teacher corrects with a touch lighter than dust. No mirror, only memory and the authority of tradition moving through joints. They rest often. The shape of stillness is as important as the movement. After an hour, a bowl of water travels. Each dancer drinks and returns the bowl with a gesture so graceful it could be a lesson. When a short storm leans hard against roofs and leaves, people let it finish without argument. Afterward, a team walks the eaves, reties a thatch, presses a ridge, checks the slope. A fallen branch becomes firewood. Then tea. Then talk. A clay tile that learned to slide is taught to stay by a wedge, and a blessing that is mostly gratitude. By evening, the village looks exactly as it did before. Which is the point. Night returns to the terraces. Stars find their reflections in the smallest paddies. A farmer walks the dike with a lamp hooded by his palm. He checks water level, listens to frogs, sets one clod just so. and stands a minute longer than needed to enjoy the kind squint of the constellations. He says a sentence to no one, enough. The fields. Feeling the word. Agree. An archivist corrects a single character that had grown tired. He deepens the groove. Rubs soot. Wipes the extra. The page looks grateful. He adds a leaf to a history of canals, floods. Fixes. Foolishness avoided by patience. His handwriting is small. Like rain deciding on a roof. He ties the bundle with cord. Sets it between law and medicine. And breathes as if he has lifted a stone from a friend's pocket. Along a royal road. Small stones stand with numbers shallowly cut. They don't brag about distance, they only keep a promise to tired feet. Workers tamp the base. Pat the sides. And step back to see the line walk away into heat, shimmer and birds. A traveler touches the fresh marker. Thanks its shade. And continues. Behind him. A child copies the numbers with a stick in dust. Leaving arithmetic like breadcrumbs on a square of swept earth. An elder pushes a stick upright and marks its shadow at intervals, small stones in a curve that will become a clock only for those who can wait. He shows a child how the shadow shortens, lengthens, returns, how the world likes cycles better than lines. At the last mark, they do nothing but smile. The sky had been teaching all along. A festival night arrives like a tide without foam. Lamps step along walls and walkways. Music circles level as the rim of a bowl. Offerings are simple, flowers that haven't decided to wilt. Fruit that wants to be admired before it becomes sweetness. No speeches. Only the sound of many people remembering the same gentle truths, that water made the rice. That hands made the temples. That patience made both. And that rest makes patience possible. A watchman counts his steps by the length of his breath. The gate he checked yesterday is still obedient. The rope is still oiled. The barrier is very black and very kind. He pauses at the threshold of the dancer's hall, respects the sleeping floor, and moves on. The last word of the night belongs to a small animal settling in a thatch eave, a sigh that could be a prayer and could be a nap. Light returns in the gentle grammar it prefers. A jar opens with a round hello. A broom traces arcs that overlap like good advice. Fires are lit as if the matches were made of gratitude. A pot asks for water and is obliged. If you have carried tiredness this far, let it step down. If you have carried calm, keep it. Share it. The day here will be like other days, better for being the same. Breathe in, breathe out. Water, stone, and work, quietly in agreement. Beneath a wide eave. Carpenters fit beam to beam without a single nail. Tenants find mortises the way river mouths find sea, naturally. Inevitably. A master checks the grain's mood with his fingertip. Then adjusts the angle of a chisel by the width of a breath. A wooden peg, oiled and modest, accepts its duty with one soft tap. The roof answers by becoming more roof. Shavings curl like small moons and gather in a basket that already smells of resin and sun. A boy stands on a low stool just to see the line where two rafters meet and become a thought you can trust. The wind arrives to test the joinery and decides it has nothing to teach today. At a pond edge, women harvest lotus with unhurried hands. Stems lay in a coil, leaves in a neat fan. One leaf becomes a cup for cool water. Filaments saved from the stems are knotted into a thread as pale as dawn, fragile, patient, useful only in the company of many sisters. The thread dries in shade, shy of sun. Later, it will enter a cloth meant for ceremonies that ask nothing and give calm. Tubers leave the mud and become a meal that remembers the pond. Petals dry under a net, their color turning from bright to kind. The pond watches its gifts carried away and does not feel poorer. Temple stares where the memory of feet. Custodians wash each tread with a cloth that would apologize if it scrubbed too hard. They pour water that has known clay. Then sweep it toward the edges where moss lives a quiet life. Where a corner has grown sharp with a chip, a carver rounds it back to mercy. The step becomes safer, more generous. Someone sets a bowl of flowers on a landing not to decorate, but to greet the next breath that arrives in a side channel. A fish weir becomes itself, stakes in a soft arc, baskets waiting downstream. The builders talk in the grammar of hands, here, a little left, there, lower. Water tests the curve and smiles. Small silver truths will arrive later. Invited rather than chased, they leave a gap for what must pass, the river's kindness to its own travelers. A kingfisher watches and approves the ethics in a dry loft above the granary. Seed jars stand like careful elders. A woman checks them, weight, scent, the way grain flows. She rolls a few kernels in her palm and listens for the soft click that means a good season sleeping. On a palm leaf she marks a tiny note, variety, field, water memory. The leaf goes back into its cord-bound bundle. A charm of woven grass hangs from the beam. Not to command luck, only to thank it when it visits. Night collects itself. A mother hums a lullaby that has forgotten its words because melody is enough. From the temple court, the pinpeat offers a soft circle of sound, roniat keys like round drops. A reed line that wanders without insisting. A drum that says steady, steady. The child's breathing joins the ensemble, then leads it, then leaves it to sleep alone. Music keeps playing for the lamp's sake. On a dike, two elders read the sky aloud in small comments. That stack means late rain. That smear means a short temper at noon. That gap is a kindness for drying clothes. They do not argue with weather. They greet it. A boy marks their reading with pebbles along the top of the dike. 3 for sure. 2 for maybe. 1 for we'll see. Later the pebbles will be brushed away, leaving only a good habit behind. Two pilgrims from opposite roads meet under a public roof. They trade stories like bread, broken in half, still whole enough. One speaks of a shrine by a red stone, the other speaks of a ferryman who knows unhurried wisdom. Neither story needs to be big. Small truths satisfy travel better. They sleep at right angles, like pages in a book that does not need to be closed. Across a narrow stream, a fresh bridge grows from bamboo and will. Lashings cinch without complaint. A man tests each bay with a step and a smile, then lets a child cross first to honor the future weight of feet. Water enjoys its new doorway and continues down its own road. In a small shed, resins soften on a timid flame. Powdered wood joins them, a mortar persuades them to become one. Slender cores roll across a board dusted with spice. Sticks line up on a bamboo tray, practicing stillness before their careers in ceremony. The room smells like many evenings at once. Novices sit in a row with palm leaves on their knees. They copy forms that were patient before they were names. The teacher says less than he thinks and breathes more than he speaks. A leaf's whole welcomes a chord, a page becomes part of a family. One boy smiles at a letter that finally consented to be itself. Two elders play a board game with rules everyone knows and no one announces. A piece advances not to attack, but to arrive where it belongs. Watching children learn strategy disguised as courtesy. Wait, see, understand, then move. When the last piece tips, both men win. A smith sharpens a plowshare. The stone sings in a thin line, the edge remembers purpose without becoming proud. He quenches it in water that sighs once and relaxes. Tomorrow the soil will feel this kindness and open with less complaint. He hangs the share by a peg to sleep above the cool floor. At night, divats wake under the moon. Cloth comes up green, becomes blue while a woman hums a one-note song. She presses the fabric between palms, not to force, but to be present. Lines on her hands take a little dye, a badge of hours well spent. When the cloth is spread, the night tries it on and finds it fits. A family repairs the roof, one passes bundles, one sets them, one smooths the ridge like hair before a photograph. They test the drip by pouring a ladle and watching where the water chooses to go. It chooses correctly after a small correction and a shared laugh. Rain will be welcomed, not endured. Festival cakes begin as simple things, rice, a quiet filling, leaves that know how to be boxes. Hands fold memory into shape. Steam lifts and learns the room's beams. When a cake is unwrapped, the scent explains why patience was always the right choice. One is saved for a neighbor who could not come. The best piece travels farthest in a courtyard. A pool holds a perfect copy of the evening. A tower becomes a dark flower, a lamp becomes two small suns. A visitor forgets which is above and which below and becomes calmer for the confusion. A leaf lands, makes a circle, and disappears into map and territory both. The settlement closes its eyes, not to escape, but to keep what it has. Doors become promises. Lamps teach darkness to be gentle. The barret rests with stars in its mouth. If you are awake, you are a watchman for a little while. If you are asleep, you are water being carried in a clay jar that never spills. Either way, morning is already making tea somewhere on the edge of the plain. Breathe in, breathe out. Water, stone, and the work of kind hands, still here. Still enough. In a side yard, two poles lift and fall into mortars with the rhythm of breathing. Husk loosens its hold. Rice becomes whiter, calmer. A winnowing tray tilts. Chaff takes the air like polite snow and drifts away to become chicken talk tomorrow. The poles rest leaning together like old friends who no longer need to speak. The last tray settles. Hands brush off flour that will sweeten the first light. A jar is closed. Night nods. On a veranda, a host folds betel leaf around a reca nut and a touch of lime. The parcel becomes a small ember of alertness. He offers it with two hands and a smile that remembers many guests. A visitor accepts, sits cross-legged, and listens to the night finish raining somewhere far away. They exchange 3 sentences about nothing urgent, water level, the kindness of a breeze, the way a dog has learned the gate's sound. The parcels do their work. Wakefulness becomes gentle, not sharp. At a fork where 2 canals nod to each other, a shrine no bigger than a basket holds a face carved by patient hands. Someone sets a flower, lights a wick, and bows as if greeting a neighbor. The flame learns the language of night without bragging. A barge slides by with its lantern shaded. The cruiser stays quiet to respect the corner. The shrine keeps nothing for itself, it gives the light back to water and trees. That is enough. In a small hall, a puppeteer pricks patterns into leather, vines, crowns, the courtesy of eyebrows. A frame rises. A lamp behind it becomes a moon that understands stories. Figures walk in silhouettes across the cloth like thoughts remembering their first shape. No drama tonight. Only rehearsal. The hero's hand pauses longer, the queen's veil breathes once more. A child in the doorway forgets to blink. The puppeteer smiles without turning. Before dawn, dew holds to every edge like tiny advice. A woman walks the herb beds, bending to taste a leaf here, a leaf there. Bitter means help later. Sweet means help now. She cuts sprigs with a humility that makes plants generous. A small cup waits among flowers for bees to drink. One decides to trust it. Another decides to wait. Both choices are correct. Under a palm, a man weaves a cylindrical trap, rings, ribs, the snug throat that invites and discourages. His hands rarely stop, his eyes wander to sky and back. A boy helps by holding the far ring and learning the difference between tight and too tight. When the last lash is done, the trap rolls once and comes to rest facing the canal. It looks like purpose made into bamboo. After rain, 2 keepers walk with lamps to a sluice. They raise the blade the height of 2 fingers and wait. The canal answers with a sound that means yes. A marker stick goes in, comes out wet to a notch that tells a comfortable story. They sit a while on the stones until their lamps begin to want refilling. The water remembers to be patient. The keepers remember to be patient with themselves. A custodian reveals an inscription. Charcoal finds the grooves. Letters stand up like shy reeds in shallow light. Someone reads them in a whisper so as not to wake the parts of the temple that prefer dreams. The words are simple: names, gifts, gratitude for water. A finger traces one line as if greeting an ancestor who still likes visitors. Along a dike, Fireflies audition to be stars and succeed briefly. Repeatedly. A child attempts to count them and learns the joy of losing count. A father points to the constellations and names none. Preferring the story where all of them mean we are not alone. The canal moves in a long lower key. Approving of the sky's performance. Light discovers a cluster of boats. Noses together like friends. Mango. Banana. Herbs. A basket of lotus heads. A jar of paste that smells like deep umami and future laughter. Buyers lean. Swap. Nod. Move on. No haggling. Only arrangement. A girl counts change into a customer's palm and sneaks a grin at the boat dog. Who has perfected the art of sleeping on coils of rope, in a shaded court? A worker polishes a threshold where many feet will pass. Circles. Always circles. Each circle decides to be invisible afterward. Which is the nature of polish. He stops often to show mercy to wrists and to admire the way light now glides without tripping. When he pours a little water, the stone drinks politely and gives back a face. Cattle move along a field edge with bells that speak in cousins' voices. A herder hums a thread between them. He checks a rope at a post, pats a flank, picks a seed from a tail and pockets it for no reason except that pockets enjoy seeds. Clouds consider shade and agree. The herd approves with slower chewing. In flats near a bright horizon, brine is spread thin as a thought. The sun works the long arithmetic. A rake gathers a light snow that will taste like oceans and noon. A woman stacks small white pyramids that will someday disappear into soups and stories. She takes a pinch on the tongue, a hello from far away. Arriving politely at a rest house. A traveling healer lays out a modest kit, cup, herbs, bandage. Patient hears. She treats a blister, measures a fever with the back of her hand, and prescribes boiled water and shade. Payment, if any, is a blessing that does not expire. When she leaves, the house feels as if it has had a good conversation. A row of scribes incise a steady melody on palm leaves. No one leads, all keep time. A novice threads cord through new holes and ties a knot that holds like a quiet promise. The bundles line a shelf that has perfected the art of carrying weight without complaint. Someone sneezes. Everyone smiles. The letters do not mind. Along the royal road, a stand offers water cooled by clay and kindness. Travelers drink in turns and leave the gourd facing outward, a sign that the next person is already welcome. Shade from yesterday's saplings is nearly enough today. Tomorrow it will be more than enough. Feet thank the road by using it lightly. At the monastery, a drum speaks a single syllable to mark noon. It is not an order, it is an invitation to be exact about resting. Work pauses and continues again. Slightly wiser for the interruption. A monk lifts the mallet, hangs it carefully, and smiles at the space it leaves. A wall receives fresh lime, thin coats, long strokes, a patience that glows. The color is the color of breath. Later, images may arrive here or not. For now, the wall enjoys being a smooth thought, well expressed. The worker steps back, appreciates the light thinking aloud across the surface, and decides the job is finished when he stops seeing where it began. Evening returns its nets to dry rails. A fisherman mends the smallest deer with a knot that chooses kindness over strength. Which is strength enough? He oils the corks with old habit and spreads the mesh like a map of patience. Tomorrow will find it ready, tonight finds it beautiful. He sits beside it and eats a simple meal that knows exactly what it is. The settlement closes again, no drama. Only good practice. Lamps shrink to the size of thoughts that can be held without effort. The barre wears stars it has tried on before and still likes. A breeze walks the dikes counting to a number it never reaches. If sleep wants you, follow it as if it were an elder with a lantern. If wakefulness stays, sit with it like a friend on the steps. Both will pass. Water and stone remain. Working there long. Gentle work. Breathe in, breathe out. Enough.